The Blue Umbrella by Ruskin. Neelu, Neelu, cried Binia. She scrambled barefoot over the rocks, ran over the short summer grass, up and over the brow of the hill, all the time calling, Neelu, Neelu, Neelu. Blue was the name of the blue-grey cow. The other cow, which was white, was called Gori, meaning fair one. They were fond of wandering off on their own, down to the streams or into the pine forest, and sometimes they came back by themselves, and sometimes they stayed away, almost deliberately, it seems to Binia. If the cows didn't come home at the night time, Binia would be sent to fetch them. Sometimes her brothers, Bijju, went with her, but these days he was busy preparing for his exams and didn't have time to help with the cows. Binia liked being on her own, and sometimes she allowed the cows to lead her into some distant valley, and then they would all be late coming home. The cows preferred having Binia with them because she let them wander. Bijou pulled them by their tails if they went too far. Binia belonged to the mountains, to this part of the Himalayas known as Garhwal. Dark forests and lonely hilltops held no terror for her. It was only when she was in the market town, jostled by the crowd in the bazaar, that she felt rather nervous and lost. The town, 5 miles from the village, was also a pleasure resort for tourists from all over India. Binia was probably 10. She may have been 9 or even 11. She couldn't be sure because no one in the village kept birthdays. But her mother told her she would be born during a winter when the snow had come up to the windows. And that was just over 10 years ago, wasn't it? 2 years later, her father had died, but his passing had made no difference to their way of life. They had 3 tiny terraced fields on the side of the mountain, and they grew potatoes, onions, ginger, beans, mustard, and maize. Not enough to sell in the town, but enough to live on. Like most mountain girls, Binya was quite sturdy, fair of skin, with pink cheeks and dark eyes, and her black hair tied in a pigtail. She wore pretty glass bangles on her wrists and a necklace of glass beads. From the necklace hung a leopard's claw. It was a lucky charm, and Binia always wore it. Bijju had one too, only his was attached to a string. Binya's full name was Binya Devi, and Bijju's real name was Vijay, but everyone called them Binya and Bijju. Binya was 2 years younger than her brother. She had stopped calling for Neelu. She had heard the cowbells tinkling and knew the cows hadn't gone far. Singing to herself, she walked over fallen pine needles into the forest glade on the spur of the hill. She heard voices, laughter, and the clatter of plates and cups, and stepping through the trees, she came upon a party of picnickers. They were holiday makers from the plains. The women were dressed in bright saris, the men wore light summer shirts, and the picnickers, admiring their clothes, listening to their unfamiliar accent and gazing rather hungrily at the sight of all their food. And then her gaze came to rest on a bright blue umbrella, a pretty thing for woman, which lay open on the grass beside its owner. Now Binia had seen umbrellas before, and her mother has a big black umbrella which nobody used anymore because the field rats had eaten holes in it. But this was the first time Binia had seen such a small, dainty, colorful umbrella, and she fell in love with it. The umbrella was like a flower, a great blue flower that had sprung up on the dry brown hillside. She moved forward a few paces so that she could see the umbrella better. As she came out of the shadow into the sunlight, the picnickers saw her. "Hello! Look who's here!" exclaimed the older of the two women. "A little village girl. Isn't she pretty?" remarked the other. "But how torn and dirty her clothes are!" It did not seem to bother them that Binya could hear and understand everything that she said about her. "They are very poor in the hills," said one of the men. "Then let's give her something to eat." And the older woman beckoned to Binya to come closer. Hesitantly, nervously, Binya approached the group. Normally she would have turned and fled, but the attraction was the pretty blue umbrella. It had cast a spell over her, drawing her forward almost against her will. "What's that on her neck?" asked the younger woman. "A necklace of sorts." "It's a pendant. See, there's a claw hanging from it." "It's a tiger's claw," said the man beside her. He had never seen a tiger's claw. "A lucky charm. These people wear them to keep away evil spirit." He looked to Binia for confirmation, but Binia said nothing. "Oh, I want one too," said the woman, who was obviously his wife. "You can't get them in shops." "But hers, then?" "Give her 2 or 3 rupees. She'll sure to need the money." The man, looking slightly embarrassed, but anxious to please his young wife, produced a 2 rupee note and offered it to Binia, indicating that he wanted the pendant in exchange. Binia put her hand to the necklace, half afraid that the excited woman would snatch it away from her. Solemnly she shook her head. The man then showed her a 5 rupee note, but again Binia shook her head. "How silly she is!" exclaimed the young woman. "It may not be hers to sell," said the man, "but I'll try again. How much do you want? What can I give you?" But he waved his hand towards the picnic things scattered about on the grass. Without any hesitation, Binia pointed to the umbrella. "My umbrella!" exclaimed the young woman. "She wants my umbrella! What cheek!" "Well, you want her pendant, don't you?" "That's different." "Is it?" The man and his wife were beginning to quarrel with each other. "I'll ask her to go away," said the older woman. "We are making such fools of ourselves." "But I want the pendant," cried he petulantly. And then, on an impulse, she picked up the umbrella and held it to Binia. "Here, take the umbrella." Binia removed her necklace and held it out to the young woman, who immediately placed it around her own neck. Then Vineyard took the umbrella and held it up. It did not look so small in her hands. In fact, it was just the right size. She had forgotten about the picnickers, who were busy examining the pendant. She turned the blue umbrella this way that looked through the bright blue silk at the pulsating sun, and then, still keeping it open, turned and disappeared into the forest glade.